Good afternoon, traders. Today I will tell you about one of the simplest technical analysis indicators, which is suitable even for beginners. I will talk about the Supertrend Indicator, and I will tell you about the strategy with it, how to level out the shortcomings of this indicator, and how to use it for your trading. So, the Supertrend Indicator is a trend indicator, which is similar to parabolic in its working principle. It shows areas where the chart tends to trend upward and areas where the chart tends to trend downward. The indicator is visually clear. That is, as you can see, when the supertrend is under the chart and marked in green, it indicates that there is a medium-term upward trend now. There is an uptrend, and we need to look for trades. Up, trade up. Conversely, red shows areas where the trend is downward and where we need to look for trades down. Supertrend is not only based on the principle of moving averages and shows us the current average trend direction, but also takes into account the volume, indicators, and ATR indicator in its calculation. And that gives us not only the strength of the trend, but also the direction of the trend and the strength of the momentum on that signal. So even though the indicator looks very simple, it is actually quite a sophisticated tool that gives quite detailed information. So what does the signal on the Supertrend Indicator look like? As you can see, there's a dip in the chart right here. The indicator is red in color, and as soon as it changes color to green, it is a signal to enter a buy trade. That is, at this point, according to the Supertrend Indicator, you should have opened a trade up, and the trade would have been quite successful. We get a sell signal as the Supertrend color turns red and the line is now above the chart. As you can see, according to the indicator, this is where we should have entered the trade and traded down. The signals are very simple and quite accurate, but the indicator works well only on trend charts and flat charts, where there are large price movements. But usually, the chart is only trending 30 to 40% of the time, and the other 60 to 70% of the time, it is flat. And in such situations, when we have a clear consolidation on the chart, i.e. without any trend up or down, supertrend will show bad results. Well, for example, you can see that there is no clear trend here. The market is in consolidation. We've got green. So this is where we should have bought, but it's actually the wrong signal. And this is where we should have sold, but it's also the wrong signal. Therefore, when market volatility is low and the chart moves in a narrow consolidation corridor, such trading periods should be skipped. And look for charts where there is a clear trend, or situations like here. There is no clear trend here, but at the same time, the price movements are quite strong, and therefore we can use short and medium-term trends for trading. Now I will tell you how to get rid of one of the indicator's disadvantages, the fact that Supertrend gives us non-stop signals. So there is a signal here. As soon as the first signal ends, the second signal begins. As soon as the second one starts, the third one starts, and so on. How do I filter out some of the signals? It is also important to understand how to avoid this period of market noise, this consolidation on the chart. So in order to trade the new strategy, we need to add 3 Supertrend indicators to the chart. We go to the menu, find Supertrend, and we need to set it 3 times. Next, you need to change the settings of each of these indicators so that they have a different period and factor. For the first indicator, we set the period length to 10 and the factor 1. This will be our first supertrend. For the second indicator, we set the length to 11 and the factor to 2. You can already see that these indicators give different readings. And the third indicator should be a length of 12 and a factor of 3. Now there are 3 supertrend indicators on the chart with different period lengths, meaning different ranges they estimate and different factors. That is, we have a slow, medium, and fast supertrend indicator. And as you can see, during periods of market uncertainty, the indicators will give us different readings on this new strategy. We should enter a trade when all 3 indicators are of the same color. For example, we see that there is market uncertainty. One indicator is green, the other 2 are red. In that situation, we don't go into the deal. We are waiting for the moment when all 3 indicators get the same color. For example, here, two lines are red, one is green. Here, two are green, one is red. It is only the moment we see that all three Supertrend indicators have turned green that we use the buy signal. Here we do not enter the deal, but enter only when all three lines have become the same color. See, that signal gave us a good result. Next, in order to catch the down signal, we wait for all three trend lines to turn red. Here, for example, is an area of uncertainty. One line is red, two are green, and here we have all three lines turned red. That's when we get into a sell trade. Let's look at this same strategy, but on a market chart, on any other data. So let's say we scroll to a random place and start right here. Yes, we had a strong downward trend. After that, a zone of uncertainty happened. We don't trade into that zone. Next, we wait for all three indicators to show us green for an up trade. This is when all three lines turn green, and this is where we enter the trade up. And focusing on the fastest indicator, we exit the deal when it changes color to red. That is, when one of the indicators, the fastest, has changed color to red, we close the deal with profit. Here we see three green signals. We waited until one of the lines turned red. This is where we lock in our profits. Next, we wait for the moment when again all three lines become the same color. Here, for example, in SE, three lines remained green. We're entering a buy trade here, trading up. And when one of the lines became red, here we fix the profit and immediately get another signal. All three Supertrend lines turned red at this point. All lines are red. Here we enter a sell trade and wait for one of the lines to turn green. There's a green signal. Here we fix the profit on this indicator. Again, as you can see, I chose a random interval of the chart, and it is not very good for us because there is no clear trend here. The movement here is consolidated, but even in such a movement, we still get profit because our strategy of three indicators helps to filter signals. But in order to get a better signal, I recommend you to use the Supertrend strategy only on charts where there is a clear trend. Here, for example, in this part of the chart, we see that we have a clear bearish trend, a clear downward trend. And in that case, we will only use the signals that we have trending. That is, we will skip the moments when the Supertrend gives a green signal and use only the moments when all three lines are red. That is, we use this signal on the trend and trade down. We skip this signal because it is against the trend, and next time we enter a sell trade if it appears again. TO the same with bullish trends. When we see that there is a clear rising trend on the chart, we use all up signals when all three lines are green and ignore all down signals when all three lines are red. And in this case, you can greatly increase the effectiveness of your signals and profitability of your trades. Now, a few recommendations on the strategy. Since the strategy is trend following, we need to choose assets that move in trends most of the time. These are major cryptocurrencies, currency pairs with the dollar and commodities, as well as gold and oil. These assets are more likely to move in a trend. I also recommend trading on timeframes of at least 5 minutes. If you use smaller timeframes, the number of signals will increase, but their quality will deteriorate. Therefore, the higher the time frame, the better the signals will be. At least 5 minutes. And ideally, it is better to choose a 15-minute or hour time frame. This is such a simple strategy, which is suitable even for beginners. With its help, you can trade on almost all assets, and it has a minimum of rules. This is a very effective strategy that will bring you profits. Share your results on the strategy in the comments and see you soon.